Welcome to another episode of Talks with Pop podcast. As always, I am your host, Walter, affectionately known as Pops. I want to start this podcast off with a question. Is Father's Day overshadowed by Mother's Day? And if so, why? And I know this is a controversial question that I'm asking, but it's one I think needs to be dove into. And through conversations with a lot of my friends and through my own experiences, I kind of thought about, hey, why is that? Why does it seem like Mother's Day is over-celebrated and Father's Day not so much? And I think through my own experiences, I know I went all out most of the times, right, to make sure that my kids' moms, make sure they felt appreciated, celebrated, make sure that day was made special for them. But when it came around to Father's Day, it just seemed like it wasn't such a big deal. And not only do I think that, I think society thinks that. I mean, Mother's Day is like the second most celebrated holiday. I think Christmas is the only one over that. And Father's Day is like somewhere down there under Arbor Day. And who even knows what Arbor Day is, right? If you know what it is, well then, good for you. I'm happy. Let's talk about why we feel as though, or why it seems as though Father's Day is underrepresented while Mother's Day is overly represented. So disclaimer, right? I am not against mothers being celebrated because I believe mothers should be celebrated. I grew up in a single parent home, after I left my grandparents and moved in with my mom. So, I saw her make the struggle. I saw her do all the things, make all the sacrifices. So I completely understand why women are being celebrated as they should be, right? But I just want to, now that I'm a father, I look at the other side of that. So let's explore it, right? Let's ask ourselves some questions. Is there a historical reason why Father's Day seems less celebrated? I think these days, and I'm going to speak for my personal experiences, right? If you guys have other experiences, I would love to hear from them, but I can only speak from my point of view. So that's what I'm going to do, right? So the way I look at it, I believe, it's a lot of perception that fathers aren't in the home anymore, especially in minority communities, right? That mothers are the only ones raising children. Mothers are the only ones making the sacrifice. Believe it or not, it's a lot of single parent dads out here. So I think society or the media or whatever you want to put it, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's a big push out there to make it seem like fathers aren't not in the home. And they are, even the ones that aren't. Does that mean that because the dad is not in the home, that they're not provided for their child, that they're not in that child's life, that they're not providing some kind of sustenance for that child? No, that's not necessarily the case all the time. But I believe that in a lot of these cases, and I'm not saying this is a fact, I don't have statistics or anything like that, but I believe a lot of times just because the mom and the dad are not seeing eye to eye, that maybe the moms are taking that day away from the fathers. Let me speak from my personal experience. So I was one of them dads that was not in the home with my son. In particular, with my daughters, I definitely was, but my son, I wasn't. My son lived in another state, this, that, and the third. So I really wasn't around him all the time. But did that mean that I wasn't trying to be a part of his life, that I wasn't trying to be close to him? No, that wasn't the case. It was just the fact that me and his mom couldn't get it together. That's neither her fault nor my fault. That was just our circumstances. And I guess we were so angry at each other, rightfully so, that maybe my son suffered in that instance. And I believe it's a lot of dads in that same situation where because the moms and the dads aren't really on the same page, like that child suffers or that dad is not celebrated as much as he should be. Now, let me make a caveat here, right? So if you're a mom and you're keeping that dad away or not celebrating that dad because you're trying to protect that child, then that's 100% understandable, right? And you're well within your right to do that. But if you're not celebrating that dad because you and him aren't getting along, then that's not fair to that child, right? It doesn't matter what your relationship is. It's not about you at that point. It's about that dad. And I believe, especially in today's society, I believe that kids need to see dads being celebrated, because there's such a big effort to make things like dads aren't important, and dads aren't in the home, and dads aren't imparting wisdom. Well, that's the furthest thing from the truth. It's a lot of dads, and I'm going to say that all throughout this episode, it's a lot of dads that are involved in their kid's life and are trying to steer that child in the right direction and giving that child everything they have, but it's just the fact that them and their mom aren't on the same page. And unfortunately, it's a lot of moms out here, not a lot, but there are some moms out here that use that child as a weapon against that dad. Well, he did me wrong, so he doesn't deserve to be around his child. No, that's y'all situation. That has nothing to do with that child. Let that dad be a part of that child's life. I believe a lot of moms out here believe that, hey, he didn't struggle. He didn't sacrifice the way I did, so maybe I should keep them away. Or maybe they just feel like that dad is not a good dad and they don't want their child to see that. They're protecting that child from that. I'm going to say this to you, ladies. If that father is not worth being around that child or that father is not a good father, listen, man, you can't hide that from that kid anyway. Let that child be around their dad because, listen, they're going to figure it out sooner or later. You can't protect them from that all their life. And they need to understand it instead of maybe bad talking to dad or all these things. Like, let him see it for himself. Yeah, protect them. You don't want your child to be injured. You don't want your child to be neglected and all these things, but expose him to that dad and let them make that decision, because maybe in your eyes, he's not good enough, but maybe to that child, he is. And I understand women do amazing things. I would take nothing from women. I appreciate women for everything they do. They go above and beyond. Where would we be without women, right? I have daughters, so I definitely am in tune to a woman's issue, a woman being talked down to, a woman being treated the way they should be treated, right? Because I have daughters and I had a mom and all these other things. But listen, man, like a woman, especially in the case of a woman raising a man, women could do amazing things, like I said before, but the one thing that a woman cannot do and will never be able to do is teach a man how to be a man. And that's not a knock on you. It's just, you just can't. You just can't. Like, a young man needs to be exposed to another man to kind of see things from a man's perspective and learn how real men address issues and things of this nature. And that's not a knock on you. It's just something that child needs. So give them that and let them see their dad be celebrated, because I think it's important. And I'm being biased because I am a man. So, of course, I feel as though men should be celebrated and kids should be able to see that man being celebrated. How does our social perception of fatherhood impact the way we celebrate Father's Day? I think we just kind of touched on that. Maybe some women feel like, hey, I'm the breadwinner. I'm the one that's making all these sacrifices. Then why should I have to celebrate the man in that instance when I'm the one doing all the work? I don't know. Are you doing the work because you want to do the work, because you have to, or because you just want to prove to that man that you don't need him, right? I don't know. I mean, do some of you feel that way? Comment. I would love to hear your take on that. Are you not celebrating that dad because you want to prove to that dad that you don't need him? But ask yourself, why you're doing that, does that child need him? Does that child need that dad in his life? How does that child feel about you not celebrating his dad, whether he did you wrong or not? Think about that child in that instance. In the case of stepfathers or fathers that adopt a man's child, how do you celebrate that? Do you over-celebrate it? Do you celebrate with the stepfather or adopted father or whatever the case may be? Do you celebrate them more than the biological dad? Do you celebrate them the same? How do you do it? Because I think everyone is worthy of that celebration, right? Because let's say in this instance of a dad that's adopted a child or a stepdad, that man chose to be a part of that kid's life. But what if the biological father's still in the picture? How do you handle that? Do you celebrate them both the same? Let me look at it from the other side of the fence. Let's say Mother's Day, and I'm with someone, and I have children. The children live with me, but they biological mom is still around. How do I do that? Like, how would I celebrate that? I think I would try to celebrate them both equally, whether the other parent deserved it or not. That's still their parent. But yes, the person who's in the home with me or the person that's assisting me day to day raising that child, yeah, they deserve to be celebrated because they're there. But at the same time, that does not take away from the fact that they have a biological mom out there that needs to be celebrated as well, right? Because the kids wouldn't be in this world without their mom. Same thing on the other side of the fence, right, with the dad. Yeah, you may have a stepdad in the picture. You may have gotten remarried. You may have done all these things, right? But that child wouldn't be in this world without that biological parent. Right and wrong and different. Once again, and if it's a situation where you're trying to protect that child from that other parent because they may neglect, they may abuse, they may all these things, then yeah, you're 100% in your right not to celebrate that father or not let that father in that child's life. But if that's not the case, if it's just a case of, hey, we're not getting along, I don't like him, he did me wrong, he cheated on me. Listen, lady, that has nothing to do with that child. That has something to do with you. And I want to look at it from both sides of the fence, right? Because there's dads do that as well. But I'm just talking about this because we're talking about dads and Father's Day and how they're not being celebrated. Once again, do not let your anger, your hurt, your disappointment for what that man did make you take it out on that child. Because that's all you're doing if you're not celebrating that biological parent because you feel as though they did you wrong. Look, take yourself out of it. Because I was in that situation, right? I'll be 100% transparent. My mom and dad broke up very young. I don't even remember my mom and dad being together, right? But the one thing I do remember is every time I heard a story about my dad from my mom's side of the family, it was always something negative. But to me, that was still my dad. Like, I loved him, and I didn't care what anybody said about him. I was still wanting him to be in my life until I actually got an opportunity to spend some time with my dad. And I quickly found out that, hey, maybe I understood why they didn't want me to be around him. Now, I will say this, like, when that happened, I was young. I didn't understand the world yet. So now as a dad, I maybe understood maybe why he made some of the mistakes he made and made some of the decisions he made that made me pull away from him. And maybe I'll do an episode on that, on how I appreciate maybe things that my dad did or forgive my dad for things that he did now that I'm a dad, right? But that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, like I said, I had to spend time around him to understand, hey, maybe this is why they wanted me to keep away from him. Or maybe, hey, I don't want to be close to this person because they're not giving me what I need, right? But once again, let that child make that decision. You don't make that decision for that child. All right, here go another one. Can we find ways to honor fathers while acknowledging the importance of mothers? Absolutely. I think two things could be true, right? You can celebrate your mom or the women in your lives for everything they do for you, but at the same time, you can do the same thing for your dad. And it doesn't have to be anything less, right? It doesn't have to be, oh, I got to do this for my mom, and then my dad isn't as important, or maybe I don't have to do as much. Listen, man, I'm telling you from a man's point of view, right? And maybe some men might not agree with you, but all I can do was give you my take on it. Listen, man, men want to be celebrated the same way women want to be celebrated. Dads want to be celebrated the same way you celebrate their moms. Just because we don't ask for a lot or we don't seem like we need a lot, we need that celebration. We need that appreciation. At least I do. Maybe I'm an exception to the rule. But in my case, I would love to be celebrated the same way my kids celebrate their moms. Because, hey, we both played a part in it and we both sacrificed the same way. Maybe you don't see a dad's outward sacrifices as much because maybe they're off working. Like in my case, I was in the military, right? So I spent a lot of time away from my daughters and my children. I was here, there, and everywhere. But that doesn't mean that I didn't sacrifice. That doesn't mean that I didn't do all these things because it wasn't right in your face, right? So yeah, let's find a way to celebrate them both. I think you can celebrate them both just in different ways. You may not take your dad to dinner, but hey, maybe take him to a ball game. Maybe do something he likes to do. If he's into cars, maybe take him to a car show, right? These are just suggestions, but I'm just saying you don't have to treat them the same, but I think you have to put the same level of effort into celebrating your mom on Mother's Day that you do with your dad on Father's Day. So let me ask you listeners some questions, right? And please, I would love to see your comments. I would love to comment on the page, either our Facebook page, all our social media sites. No, leave me a comment. Tell me how you feel about this. Tell me how wrong you think I am or how right you think I am. But here's some questions for you guys. What do you feel about the current day of Father's Day celebrations? If you're a dad out there, how do you feel as though you're being celebrated on Father's Day? And if you're not being celebrated the way you think you should be, how do you think you should be celebrated? What would you like to see your kids do? And if you're a woman that celebrates the father of her kids on Father's Day, what do you do? What do you do to make that day special for their dad? And that goes to my next question. What are some ways you show appreciation for Father's Day? So if you are a dad that's being celebrated, like how are you being celebrated? What do you like? I can share it to other dads. Like, hey, this is what my kids do for me on Father's Day. And maybe that'll give some kids out there some ideas. If you're a kid watching, ask your dad. Or tell me what you do for your dad. Hey, I do this for my dad. He really loved this on Father's Day. Would you like to see changes in how we celebrate fatherhood? For one, I definitely want to see changes the way we celebrate fatherhood. Like, I think whether that dad is in the house or not, he's still that child's father, in my opinion. And obviously, I'm biased because I'm a dad. But yeah, like, I would love to see everybody get behind Father's Day the way we get behind Mother's Day. And maybe I'm speaking from a little bit of jealousy, right? Not jealousy in a bad way, but man, mothers are super celebrated. And dads are like, hey, you're doing what you're supposed to do. But aren't moms doing what they're supposed to do too? And I'm not saying moms aren't pulling double duties. Like some moms are doing the man's job and the woman's job at the same time. But like I said earlier, let's ask ourselves why we're doing that. Are we doing that to prove that we don't need a man in our life? Or we do it in spite of the dad? Or are we doing it because we really have to do it? Let's look at that, ladies. Let's take an internal look at ourselves and find out why we're doing these things. And I'm not saying all men are worthy of being celebrated. Because if I'm being realistic, man, there's some men out there that aren't worth the celebration, right? But who makes that decision? Do you make that decision? Do you let your child make the decision? Do you let society make the decision? Who makes that decision? And is it a realistic decision? Maybe that's a conversation we need to have. I want to do this. I want to encourage listeners. Like I said, I want y'all to share with me what we talked about today. Do you feel as though fathers are being celebrated, or should they be celebrated? And if you feel as though Father's Day shouldn't be as big as Mother's Day, tell me why. And if you are doing it, tell me how you're doing that as well. What does your husband, what does the father of your kids appreciate you doing? Share that with us so we can share that with other dads or other kids. And to these kids out there, take a hard look at yourselves, right? Are you celebrating your dad the way they need to be celebrated? And I'm talking about little kids, adult kids. Just because you get older doesn't mean that your parents mean less. If anything, they mean more. Because as you become older, young adulthood, that relationship, we become less, you need to do this because I tell you to do it, and more, like we say in the military, senior enlisted advisor work. We're more of the, hey, guide you. Like, hey, listen, I wouldn't do that. Or if you ask me my opinion, I think you should do this. But we get to the point we can no longer tell you what to do. We become more advisors in your life, man. And that's how the natural transition should be, because kids are going to tune us out at a certain point. So we have to learn how to reevaluate that relationship. I don't have any resources for you guys, but if you guys have resources on how fathers could be better appreciated on Father's Day or just any other day, right? Because it doesn't take Father's Day for you guys to really pour into your dads or pour into your moms for that matter. That day is just specifically set aside for that. But listen, man, I believe Father's Day and Mother's Day is every day, because there's a lot of parents out there that sacrifice everything for their kids. Some parents sacrifice their whole life for their children. Is that the right answer? Is that the wrong answer? Maybe that's the episode. That's something else we need to talk about. Now, one thing I did want to kind of talk about was, as you saw this episode, it was just me by myself. Does that mean me and my son are doing episodes together anymore? Absolutely not. That's still my dog. That's still my guy. But the schedules doesn't allow us to film as much as we want to together. And instead of putting episodes off for long periods of time until we get our schedules together, we decided, hey, I'll just film episodes by myself at times. Whenever I can get you on, he'll be a special guest. And then we'll cover all the topics that we normally cover. But I really enjoy doing this podcast. I hope you guys enjoy listening. And just continue to follow us, continue to support. We're on all social media sites, Talks with Pops Podcast. We're on our YouTube channel, Talks with Pops Reloaded. Please go on there, share a comment, subscribe. We also have an audio version of this podcast, Talks with Pops Podcast. It's anywhere you can download your audio podcast. So yeah, continue to support. Son is a gamer. He goes crazy on 2K, I believe, the basketball game. So Ayoye is his gamer tag. I'll go ahead and leave his tag at the bottom of here. So you young guys want to mix it up, or even some of you older guys want to, you go ahead and do that. I enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. It's definitely different for me, but I love doing it. I love talking to you guys. And like I said, the purpose of this podcast for me is just to always encourage conversation between fathers and sons, or mothers and daughters, or whatever the case may be. You can sit down and comment how wrong I was, or how wrong we were, or how my take is this or that. But just spark conversation. You don't need an excuse to go talk to your parent, man, or you go talk to your kid. Just do it. Trust me. Never miss the opportunity to talk to your parent. Never miss the opportunity to talk to your kid. I'll leave you with that question. Why are fathers not celebrated on Father's Day? I would love to hear your responses. I'm sure a lot of people got a lot of opinions on it, and I would love to hear it, and I'll share it in future episodes. I'll leave you with a story. I remember while I was still married, I was going through a rough patch with my ex, and it just happened to be around Father's Day. And knowing that Father's Day was a very important day for me, they kind of minimized it. I don't think she did it on purpose. I just think because we was going through our thing that she really didn't put a lot of emphasis on it. And that kind of hurt me. Just the fact that I could have been celebrated, but because me and her were on bad terms, she didn't feel that I was worthy of being celebrated at that time. Not a knock on her. We were both, like I said, we got married young. We learned a lot and we got better as we went on. But that's one of the stories that really stick out of my mind. And that's what gave me the viewpoint of what I talked about. Are you doing it on purpose? Are you not celebrating these dads on purpose because of your own personal things you're going through? Or is it really necessary? Or are you really trying to protect that child? Like I said, men, we want the same things out of relationships. We want the same thing out of fatherhood that you guys want out of motherhood and all that. So just take that into consideration, right? Maybe we don't say we want a lot, but we want the same things that you guys want as far as everything. Relationships, between partners, between kids. We want the same things you guys want. We're just not as vocal. But hey, I'll leave you with that. But once again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Talks with Pops. Another episode in the books. I hope you continue to support. You guys have a good one, man. Love y'all.